Things are getting real, y'all. Welcome to a very, very special semester at PV. Yeah, this is gonna be the new normal now. So, I'll be making some videos asynchronous for now. If we have to, and it's mandated that I have to do like Zoom conferences with y'all, I will start transitioning to that maybe later in the semester. But for now, I'm just gonna do some just homemade asynchronous videos for you to watch in your own time, within a reasonable limit, because we have to make some changes. So if we look at this syllabus. Alright, so we are here. We should have been here. So what's going to happen is, this entire week, gone. Just copy previous week, Vindication for Rights of Women, Epistle on Man, boom, to here this week. I'm an Honest Man, Toba Tek Singh, gone. Group presentations, delayed slightly. Notes on a Native Son, gone. So right now, our next readings, and actually really the only readings we have left, are Vindication Rights of Women, Essay on Man, Epistle 1, Samuel Beckett's Endgame, and Omeros. Those are going to be our last few readings going forward. Other than that, we will get through this semester as best as possible. Meaning we're only going to have 9 journals instead of 10. Meaning the last journal, Journal 9, will be worth a bit more than the other journals. So, on e-courses, I've already put up the PowerPoint notes for, not for a Vindication on the Rights of Women, but a companion piece. There's a link here called Declaration of Sentiments. This is a companion piece that I want you to read on the Vindication Rights of Women. This Declaration of Sentiments comes from one of the earliest, actually it's the world's first ever women's rights conference in the world, in Seneca Falls. It was a long-lasting tradition that started with both the women's rights movement and the abolition, anti-slavery movement in America. It has a long history, and it's mostly covered in the PowerPoint declarations. It compares also Epistle on the Rights of Man and Vindication on the Rights of Women with the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America. If you want to, and I recommend maybe doing that as well, reading as a companion piece, read all of those at once, because they're very, very quick, short readings. That's why next week we actually have 2 different journals. Journal 6 is on the human rights in general. Where do human rights come from? What are the absolute line in the sand rights that you believe truly must be universal? What links should a person go to in order to defend these rights? Because that's what we're getting to in the pre-modern era, or the early modern period, the Enlightenment period, so as it was called. A lot of writers and thinkers started thinking more about individual human rights. Who has them? What should they have? Yada, yada, yada. It was all basically in a time of awakening, moving away from monarchy and absolute rule and absolute power and dictatorships from the aristocratic forces into giving the everyday person more rights and power. So, Journal 6, Human Rights in General, Declaration of Independence, an Essay on Man, that'll be due on March 25th. Journal 7, Women's Rights, Declaration of Sentiments, Vindication of the Rights of Women, will be due on March 28th. And that one's about explain your feelings on the rights, or lack thereof, that women had throughout history. How much of this were you aware of, and how much of this shocked you? Again, with all journals, as long as you have at least 300 words, as long as you are clearly, explicitly detailed, as long as you are referring to things directly in the text, you're not wrong and you should get 100. The only people that get points off are people that go under 300 words, vastly under 300 words, or people just give me a summary without actually answering the questions. That's the only way to get points off in this. As long as I can tell you're thinking and actually putting a bit of effort into this, you're fine. So, The PowerPoint are some things I want to go over in this. In the Declaration of the Rights of Women, something has to be said about the Seneca Falls Convention and the suffragette movement of the 1800s, and then the suffragette movement of the 1900s, because there's a huge, vast difference. And every time around when we have the anniversary of women getting the right to vote in America, we can talk about, like, oh yeah, don't celebrate these women too hard because they are racist. Not every woman got the right to vote on that day. Don't forget that. And that's true. How did we get from Frederick Douglass himself, one of the acclaimed abolitionists, being so strongly allied with the women's suffrage movement, to the women's suffrage being only kind of a white women only group at its climax in the 19 teens and 20s? And there's a reason for that. It's not a good one. It's not condoned by any stretch of the imagination. Because remember, our job as scholars is not to condemn or condone, but to understand and contextualize. The women's suffrage movement kind of had a falling out with the abolition movement after emancipation. There were a lot of people who worked together, but once black men were freed and black men got the right to vote, and when slavery was abolished, many of those people who were abolitionists stopped helping the suffragette movement. And a lot of the women in the suffragette movement were, maybe rightly so, angry that they had worked so hard with the abolitionists and they felt abandoned. Where they were not, because Frederick Douglass was still a staunch staunch advocate for women's rights, but he and Elizabeth Cady Stanton had a huge falling out and a huge fight over the fact that, hey, now that slavery is over, and why do only men still get the vote? And it was a huge, dramatic, petty mess. And that's kind of why the suffragette movement going forward kind of got a little racist. And it's sad. But that's what happened. And it's something that we need to know and have in our thoughts before we move forward. But before this, they were so tightly joined that they were inseparable. The abolition movement to give black people freedom and the rights of women to vote were hand in hand, inseparable for a time. The fact that they fell apart is kind of a tragedy. So that's what I want you to have in mind for this week. This week we're focusing on human rights, both general human rights and the evolution of the women's rights movement. And where's it at now? Where did it come from? How far do we still need to go? This is a lot of talking discussion that, frankly, would be great for an in-class discussion, but, I don't want any of y'all getting sick. So here we are. What else do we have coming up next? Oh, right. So, the group presentations. Clearly, we can't present. So instead, the group presentations are going to be heavily focused on the write-up. We went over this in class before, but I want to go over it again. Where did I put that? Okay, I moved the Dropbox for the group presentation down to actually where it is in this semester, as opposed to, for the top where, you'll probably miss it. Here's what we're going about. So, in whatever capacity that you can to make groups, whether it's in the group chat, a Google Docs, a Google Hangout, the group me, or whatever, Telegram, emailing each other, whatever, start making groups of, I want 3 to 4, but if it's just 2 of y'all, if you can't find a single person and you gotta do something by yourself, do whatever you can in order to get this done. So what you're going to do is, in your groups, you're going to take one, quote, ancient work, any literary work before 1500, CE or AD, however you want to call it. CE means Common Era, AD means Anno Domini, Year of Our Lord. If you're not a Christian, you call it CE Common Era, because it's the same scientific principle. So one of the things about most ancient literature is that it never sought out to be literature. It didn't want to be high art. It was its mainstream pop culture schlock of its day. William Shakespeare was basically Tarantino, with the same blood, guts, violence, sex, and toilet humor that we'd expect from like a Kevin Smith film. Because most ancient works, most ancient literature and mythology was its comic book, just popcorn pop culture, what I want y'all to do is take any ancient work and reimagine it as if it was written today. And you can do anything with this. Now, you were supposed to have presented this to the class, now you can't really do that. So, instead, what I want you to do is make one sort of piece of artistic medium. A comic book panel, a video if you can, a drawing, a PowerPoint, or whatever, just to walk me through it. Some sort of visual media to represent the adaptation of this ancient work into the modern era. And the main thing you're going to be judged upon, because I can't grade a skit in class anymore, is the write-up. I want it to be a lot more formal. Not completely formal, but a bit more formal and well thought out about what changes you made and why. Why did you adapt these changes? Like, for instance, one group in my past class, they did the Iliad. And they changed the Iliad from the Trojan War to an old Western story. And one of the students actually drew a comic book panel of Hector and Achilles as Wild West gunmen in a shootout. Because e-courses and Turnitin doesn't really do a good job of letting visual media be uploaded, instead, what I'm going to have y'all do is just one person, only one, from the group has to email me the artistic medium, the PowerPoint, the drawing, the video, whatever. But everyone in the group has to turn in a copy of the write-up. Now, this semester is going to be a bit slapdash, so I'm not going to grade this nearly as hard. I just want you to have fun and think about it in an exciting, interesting sort of way. Don't have to get too creative if that's not your forte. You don't have to fear that you're going to be graded so harshly. As long as you put the bare minimum worth of effort, as long as you follow these instructions, A's all across the board. If you don't follow any of them, that's when it's going to get bad. So just think outside the box, have fun. It doesn't have to be anything that we read in class. It can be any ancient work that we've ever discussed or not discussed in the class. As long as it's written before 1500, you can do it. Tale of the Genji would make a great soap opera or telenovela. It is sex everywhere in that. Everyone's sleeping and doing political backstabbing all over the place, so it gets very Game of Thrones as opposed to, an epic adventure. So just have fun with it. So what else? So yeah. This week, women's rights. Next week, start working on the group presentations. Of course, I gave y'all until Saturday. I gave y'all until, what did I say? You have until April 4th. You have 72 extra hours to work on this. Just to think about it, plan it. So I'm not expecting anything too over the top or crazy or magnificent. Whatever you can do, do it. So that's our next 2 weeks. This week, human rights and women's rights. Next week's the presentation. And that's it. I'll be back with more of these soon to help sort of facilitate better understanding of the topic material, especially when we get to post-colonialism, and especially when we get to Samuel Beckett's Endgame. I'm going to post a link to a recording of the play for Endgame, because it's a dense script, and it's a crazy, crazy play, and it's going to need a lot of explaining before you even begin to watch it. So for the next 2 weeks, this is what we're going to focus on. Journal 6 and 7 this week, group presentation next week. I say group, but if you want to work by yourself, or you got to work by yourself, do what you got to do. I promise you, we will get through this semester by any means necessary. And I really hope that you're all staying safe and that you're healthy right now. Really worried about y'all. Might not think it, but, I actually care really, really, really much about my students. So, stay safe. I'll see you again in another video. And, yeah. Good luck and work hard. Bye.